What's up, everybody? Thanks as always for supporting the show. It would mean a lot to me if you would take a second to scroll down and hit that subscribe button to the Hoops Tonight YouTube channel, and then follow me on social media on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter so you guys don't miss any of our content over the course of this season. All right, let's talk some basketball. Celtics Bulls. So I talked about, last week, the idea of the Celtics having so much margin for error and being able to try stuff, right? Because they're going into last night, they were 6 games up on the 2 seed in the East, and then 4 games up on the 1 seed in the West. So they just have a comfortable margin to work with, right? And they also have a super easy schedule down the stretch of the season. Well, you saw that a little bit in the first half. Like, they straight up ran 5 possessions of that 3-2 zone that they've been working on as of late, and they got cooked in it. I think they gave up 9 points in the 5 possessions of the 3-2 zone. Chicago got in a rhythm. They had 39 points in the second quarter. Kobe White made like a drifting 3 on a kind of a breakdown defensive rotation situation where he had a drifting 3 on the left wing, put him up by 3, 62-59 going into the half. But in the second half, Boston tightened the screws in their man-to-man defense for 1 quarter, and the game was over. And again, that's the flexibility that they have with their talent and with the margin that they have in the standings. And they were really sharp in their extra efforts on defense. They had several blocks at the rim. The Celtics had 11 blocks in this game. As a matter of fact, they're second in the league in blocks. Just so many athletes. There was this play, Alex Caruso got a steal and threw like a 2-handed overhead bounce pass that hit, I think it was Ayo Dosunmu in transition, and he was ahead of the field. But Jaylen Brown and Derek White were trailing the play. And I remember as I'm watching it, and I don't even know what's going to happen yet, I'm like, this is a bad idea. Like, you might as well pull this one out. And like, Derek White and Jaylen Brown both just sky way above the rim and block the Dosunmu at the rim. Also, the Celtics broadcasters were talking about Vucevic and how he was kind of killing them in the first half. And I think it was Scalabrine mentioned, like, they have to do a better job on Vucevic's rolls to the rim of digging down and making it harder for him to catch there, or harder for him to elevate when he gets there. And they were just doing a better job when Vucevic caught there in the second half of digging down from the weak side and disrupting the basketball. Drew Holiday had to dig down from the left wing where he actually knocked the ball loose and caused a turnover. They just did a much better job defensively. And then again, helping off of iffy shooters. The Bulls are 24th in 3-pointers made per game. So that's the team that you want to pack the paint on. They got it going on the defensive end, which led to success on the offensive end as well. And then they pulled away in that third quarter. Obnoxiously good jump shooting in this game. The Celtics made 19 pull-up jump shots. They scored 50 points on 34 attempts. Comes out to 1.47 points per shot. Think about how insane that is in pull-up jump shooting. Anything over 1 point is good. The Celtics average slightly over 1 point in pull-up jump shot situations. But like, again, pull-up jumpers are the reason why just barely over 1 point is good there, when like a 120 offensive rating is more like what you want in a grand scheme of a game. Most of the time, pull-up jump shooters are like coverage beaters or rescue possession type situations. The Celtics actually can lean on them in high doses in nights like this when they're making them at such an insane clip. Jaylen Brown was just insanely hot in the first half. The Celtics were running horn sets, where they have 2 players at the elbow, 2 players in the deep corner, player up top. They were running horn sets to get Jaylen Brown with Nikola Vucevic switched onto him, and then he would just beat Nikola Vucevic with like a hard downhill move into like a step back 3. He also hit like a left shoulder fade over Alex Caruso out of the post. We're going to talk some more about that here in a minute, but he had a really, really nice stretch in that first half. He had 20 points to kind of keep them in the game while their defense wasn't as locked in. And then in that third quarter run, Jayson Tatum and Derek White got their pull-up jump shots going. Hauser ended up hitting a big 3 in transition on the left wing. All of a sudden, they're up 14, and they never looked back. Really sharp performance to start the Celtics season out of the break. I'm going to stay on Boston for a minute because I wanted to clarify some comments that I made earlier about Boston's lack of an interior attack. This is something I've been talking a lot about. I've been harping a lot on Boston's offense because I think it's the main thing that is going to be the determining factor of their success in the postseason. And Boston is an elite offense, elite of the elite. But they've been elite in the large sample. They have also had a tendency to go really cold in individual games, especially in high-profile games, and their offense has fallen apart in those situations. And so I've been talking about them needing to have a counter, something that they can do that is more physically aggressive towards the rim when the jump shots aren't falling. I've had a lot of Celtics fans since I've been kind of getting on that wagon talking about how the Celtics they actually post up more than any team in the league. For the record, it's true. Boston posts up more than every team in the league except for Denver. Denver's the one team that posts up more than them. And they're the most efficient post-up team in the NBA. Boston scores 1.15 points per post-up, including passes. But all of their post-up offense, including passes, only amounts to 12.8 points per game. Denver's also a really good post-up team, right? They're number 1 in post-up frequency, but they're also number 2 in points in the paint per 100 possessions. Boston is 27th in points in the paint per 100 possessions. Why? Because posting up is only one way to get into the paint. There are many, many different ways to get the basketball into the paint. Just like driving is only one way to get in the paint. Remember when all the talk was going on about the Lakers and their foul discrepancy and how they drive less than any team in the league? People think that driving is the only way to get in the paint. That's not how it works. The Lakers make the second most shots in the restricted area per game in the NBA. 56% of the Lakers' shot attempts come within 8 feet of the rim, despite the fact that they don't drive the basketball very much. Why is that? They are top 10 in points scored on cuts. Boston is 21st. They are first in 2-point field goals made on rolls to the rim. Boston is 26th. Boston is mainly a pick and pop team. They take a lot of threes in pick and roll, right? Boston is 24th in field goals made on offensive rebound situations. Even in transition, Boston is second in transition threes made per game, but they are 17th in transition twos made per game. They run the floor for threes, whereas the Lakers are third in transition twos scored per game. I'm not trying to compare the Lakers to the Celtics. Celtics are way better than the Lakers. They'd kick the shit out of them if they played in a series tomorrow. I'd pick them in 4 or 5 games. What I'm trying to make a point about is about the offensive versatility. Yes, the Celtics post up a lot, but they do not generate nearly enough points in the paint, which is a more resilient form of scoring than what happens when we get to the postseason. Again, like even if you look at their post ups, they're a post up team that takes a lot of fadeaway jump shots out of the post. They had 18 post ups versus Chicago last night. 11 of them either ended up in fadeaway jumpers or kick out jump shots. Like they post up for jump shots too, which is why their points in the paint are so limited. I'm not worried about it in the large sample. Boston, like to steal a phrase from my friend Sam Vecini, who came on the show last week, like they're ass kickers. They're total ass kickers on the offensive end of the floor. They are by far the best regular season team in the league. And I think they'd easily dispatch in the playoffs all but a small handful of teams. But we know one thing for sure. Boston can go cold. They went cold against Denver. They lost. They went cold against Milwaukee. They lost. They went cold against the Lakers. They lost. They went cold against the Clippers. They lost. It's not the large sample I'm worried about. It's the small sample size that I worry about for Boston. In the event that they find themselves in the Eastern Conference semis or Eastern Conference finals against Milwaukee or New York, and the series is tied at 2, and Game 5 is in Boston, and it's a super physical rock fight type of game, what happens if they go cold? What do they do next? Because we've seen in all those games I just mentioned, the Denver game, the Milwaukee game, and the two LA teams, in those games, it wasn't like they were cold for a half and then they got hot. It was a consistent theme throughout the game. Even when they made a couple, they weren't able to sustain it. And a big part of that is that's just how these types of games go. This has been an overarching theme of my kind of basketball philosophy for a long time. The more important the basketball game is, the more physical it becomes, the more intense it becomes, and the more the skill-oriented parts of the game become difficult. Which is why I am so, high on teams that have interior physicality. Just go back through NBA history. Like last year's Denver Nuggets team, biggest, strongest player on the floor, Nikola Jokic. Now, the Warriors in 2022, it's Steph Curry. He's the greatest small perimeter player in the history of basketball. So he's the exception that proves the rule. You can't use him as evidence of what you can do. Nobody on Boston is even remotely in the same stratosphere as a shooter as Steph Curry. So that can't be your approach, right? 2021, Giannis Antetokounmpo, biggest, strongest player on the floor most of the time. 2020, LeBron James and Anthony Davis, big, massive, physically imposing front line. 2019, Kawhi Leonard, big, massive, physically imposing forward. Like that is the way you win most of the time. And again, I was literally, you guys know I coach high school basketball here in town. I was watching our kids play in a playoff game on Wednesday, and They were up by 1 with less than a minute left, and then the other team made a couple of plays. They ended up winning by 4, and their season's over now. But in the game, it was interesting because once again, watching the game, super, super intense. Both teams, season on the line. Both teams bringing crazy, crazy level of effort on both ends of the floor. You know what wasn't happening? A ton of three-point shots. And that's not to say that that's not an important part of the game. Of course, it's an important part of the game. And before you say, this is how we've been playing and it's been working, that's not the case. In 2022, when the Celtics made it to the NBA Finals and got within 2 wins of hoisting the trophy, they were 8th in three-point attempts per 100 possessions, not first. They were 15th in points in the paint per 100 possessions, not 27th. They were a much more balanced scoring team in that 2022 season than they were now. They have gone so far in that direction to the point where now they've attached their fate to variance. Last night in Chicago, they scored 129 points. Only 30 of them were in the paint. They attempted 57 jump shots in that game. Again, it's not about Chicago. It's not about the 82 game regular season. This is 100% about a 7-gamer against a healthy Knicks team, against a healthy Bucks team, against a healthy Nuggets team, or a healthy Clippers team. That's the lens that we have to look through. By the way, I have Celtics second as my list of championship contenders. I think they're the most talented team in the league. Why I'm harping on this is going to make or break their season, in my opinion. There is a chance that they just go into the playoffs and they make their threes 5 to 6 times per series and they just beat the shit out of everybody. That's a chance. I'm not trying to say that that's not possible. Of course that's possible. But winning an NBA championship is hard. Winning 4 series in 2 months is hard. And they have made themselves beatable in the sense that if you can play them into their worst tendencies and they go and you play a super physical brand of basketball, you can get them to go cold and you might be able to steal the series from them. If Boston loses, that's what it will look like. A way to prevent that from happening is to be more active in those specific areas. Run in transition for layups and dunks whenever you can. Take the threes when they're an option. Stop running for the purpose of taking threes. Roll to the basket harder more. Jaylen Brown, Drew Holiday, and Jayson Tatum. When you're posting up, stop settling for fadeaways every damn. Like, Jaylen Brown is the best fadeaway jump shooter in the league this year. Outstanding athlete. He can go over both shoulders. Excellent fadeaway jump shooter. Even the best fadeaway jump shooter in the world is not close to as efficient on that shot as Nikola Jokic is on a hook in the lane. Forget about that. It's not even close to as efficient as Jaylen Brown and Jayson Tatum can be in physical bully ball post-up possessions. So like crashing the offensive glass more, running in transition for layups and dunks, posting up with physicality towards the rim instead of finesse away from the rim, rolling to the basket more in pick and roll situations. Those are all like cuts to the basket off the ball instead of constantly spotting up, maybe taking advantage of a defender being out of position by cutting to the basket. These are all ways that Boston can add points in the paint to make their scoring more resilient. That 2022 Boston team, that's a great mark to beat. 8th in three-point attempts per 100 possessions, 15th in points in the paint. That is an analytically sound approach. You are taking advantage of high-value shots on the floor while making sure that you have some more resiliency when the shots aren't falling. Boston was able to win ugly better in that season than they were this season. And again, I don't want this to come off as Celtics criticism. That's not what I'm trying to do. We're nitpicking here because we're talking about the very best of the best. Like, if I wanted to talk about the Lakers, I'd have to get into 17 other massive issues before they'd even have a chance to be in these conversations, right? Boston has everything else checked. If they can figure this out, they will hoist the trophy. That is why I'm viewing this as such an important swing factor for them this season.